Okay, I want you to close your eyes for a second. Just for a second. Picture the word genius. Let an image pop into your head.
I think I know where you're going with this.
I'm willing to bet good money I know exactly who you're seeing.
It's the hair, isn't it?
It is absolutely the hair, that wild, white, frizzy halo, the mustache, the guy sticking his tongue out for the camera.
Albert Einstein?
Of course. He is literally the stock photo for smart human.
He is. He's the archetype.
Yeah.
I mean, when we want to say someone is intelligent, we call them an Einstein. He's become more of a symbol than a person at this point.
Right, and that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive into the architect of wonder. Because the source material we're looking at today, it kind of tears that symbol down.
It argues that the Einstein we think we know, the old man with the chalkboard, is actually the boring part of the story.
And that the real story, the one that actually explains how he, picked the universe, starts with someone totally different.
It starts with a failure, or at least with someone the world thought was a failure.
Yeah, let's get into that. Because the source opens with this description of him as a child. And it is not the young Sheldon vibe you'd expect at all.
Not even close. He wasn't solving calculus at age 4.
Far from it.
The text highlights that he was late to talk. And not just a little late. We're talking late enough that his parents were genuinely worried he might be intellectually disabled.
Wow.
Yeah, he don't really play with other kids. He had these tantrums. And when he finally did speak, he had this weird habit of whispering sentences to himself before saying them out loud.
The source describes him as looking at the world like he was listening to a sound no one else could hear.
Which is a beautiful, poetic line, but let's be real. If you were his teacher in, say, 1885, you wouldn't think poetic genius.
No, you think this kid is slow.
And they did. The source is very clear that his teachers found him incredibly frustrating. He would just stare into space for long periods.
So how do we reconcile that? We have the guy who eventually figures out that time itself is flexible, yet he's sitting in a classroom in Munich, just, staring at the ceiling, looking totally checked out.
Well, the source suggests he wasn't checking out. He was processing. He was just processing in a way that the 19th century German education system was not built to handle. He was a visual thinker in a purely verbal world.
Okay, so a different kind of intelligence.
A completely different kind. But there is one specific moment, a memory Einstein himself pointed to later in life, that really kicked this processing into high gear.
The compass.
The compass.
I love this story because it's so small, so simple. He's what, 4 or 5 years old?
Around 5, yeah. He's sick in bed. His father brings him a simple magnetic compass, probably just to cheer him up.
Now, for most kids, that's a fun toy for about 5 minutes. You spin it, the needle wiggles, you move on.
Right. It points north. That's the rule. You learn the rule, you accept it, and you go play with something else.
But he didn't accept it.
He was completely transfixed. He turned the case, but the needle just ignored him. It kept stubbornly pointing north. And the way the source describes his reaction is so crucial. He felt the needle was being acted upon by something invisible.
Something invisible.
That's the key phrase. He looked at the empty space between the needle and the glass, and he had this profound realization that it wasn't empty. There was a force there, a structure that he couldn't see, but it was physically pushing and pulling that little metal needle.
So a 5-year-old is having a cognitive crisis over a compass?
I think that's a perfect way to put it. It was a cognitive break. The source argues this was the true birth of his scientific mind. It planted this deep, nagging suspicion that the real world is hidden behind the one we see every day.
So while most of us see the effect, the needle moves, he was obsessed with the cause, the field, the hidden logic.
Exactly. And he basically spent the rest of his life trying to expose that logic. But before he could do that, he had to survive school.
Which, going back to the source, seems to be where the real conflict starts. It wasn't just that he was quiet. He actively hated the way he was being taught.
Well, you have to look at the context. This is late 19th century Germany. The education system was modeled on the military. It was all about drill, repetition, obedience. You stand up, you recite the fact, you sit down. No questions.
The source uses that great phrase, uniforms of thought.
Yes. They wanted every student's mind to wear the exact same uniform. And Einstein, he just couldn't do it. It wasn't that he was incapable of memorizing things. He flat out refused to. He hated the idea that knowledge was just a list of facts to be spit back out on command.
There's that anecdote where a teacher actually tells him he'd be better off leaving the school entirely.
Can you imagine? The teacher said his mere presence, his quiet, questioning attitude, was destroying the respect of the entire class.
Being told your silence is disrespectful.
But for Einstein, asking why wasn't insubordination. It was the only thing that mattered. So eventually he leaves. He bounces around a bit. He even renounces his German citizenship. He's effectively a stateless, unemployed dropout for a while.
Which brings us to the part of the story that always blows my mind. The miracle year. But it doesn't happen at a university or a fancy lab.
No. It happens at a patent office in Bern, Switzerland.
The patent office. The most mundane setting you could possibly imagine for revolution in thought.
So paint that picture for us, because I think people imagine him as a secret genius scientist by night, but he was literally a clerk, right?
He was a technical expert, third class. He sat at a small desk 8 hours a day reviewing applications for things like gravel sorters and electric typewriters. So why there? What was it about that environment that unlocked his brain when school just shut it down?
Because it was boring. But it was a very specific kind of boring. The work was actually pretty easy for him. He could apparently finish a day's worth of applications in just a few hours.
So that left him with hours of time where he had to look busy, but his mind was completely free.
The laboratory of the mind, that's what he had. He didn't have a lab. He didn't have telescopes or fancy equipment. He had a pencil, some paper, and his imagination.
And the source highlights that this isolation was actually his superpower.
It absolutely was. If he had been a junior professor at a university, he would have had to publish normal papers, attend boring meetings, and basically agree with all the old established professors. But in the patent office, no one was watching.
He was free to think thoughts that were considered crazy by the academic establishment.
And the craziest thought he had, the one that really started it all, goes back to that visual style of his. He started doing these Gedankenexperimenten.
Thought experiments.
Yes. And the most famous one, which he actually started thinking about as a teenager, was a simple question. What would happen if I could chase a beam of light?
Okay, let's stop here for a sec, because I've heard this before. Riding a beam of light. And it sounds like a fun fantasy, like something from a comic book. But why was this a deep scientific problem?
Because of the paradox it creates. So imagine you are running 10 miles an hour, and you throw a ball forward at 10 miles an hour.
Why?
To you, the ball is moving away. But to someone standing still on the sidewalk, that ball is moving at 20 miles an hour.
Great. Simple addition.
Exactly. Now, apply that same logic to light. Imagine you are in a spaceship chasing a light beam. If you could somehow catch up to it, if you could travel at the speed of light and you looked over at the light beam, what should you see?
I assume. You'd see the light beam frozen next to you, like a wave that isn't moving.
That's what intuition says. But the established physics of the time, Maxwell's equations, said that was impossible. Light is an electromagnetic wave. If it stops moving, the wave collapses, it ceases to exist.
So Einstein is stuck. He can imagine catching the light, but the laws of physics say he can't actually see what he's imagining.
It's a fundamental contradiction. So either the laws of physics are wrong, or
our understanding of moving and seeing is wrong.
And this is where he broke reality. He realized that the only way out of the paradox was if the speed of light is constant. It always moves at the same speed, no matter how fast you are running towards it or away from it.
Wait, that still hurts my brain. If I'm running at 99% the speed of light, and I turn on a flashlight, the light from that flashlight still moves away from me at full speed.
Yes.
But how?
Yeah.
How is that possible? If I'm already going super fast, how does the light know to stay ahead of me by that same exact amount?
This is the genius of it. The only way for the speed of light to stay constant for everyone is if time itself changes.
Time changes.
For you, moving that fast, time must slow down, and space must shrink. That's the only way the math works out, the only way light can keep its constant cosmic speed limit.
So time isn't this universal clock on the wall that's the same for everyone. It's personal. It's squishy.
It's relative, hence the theory of relativity. The source calls this cracking the old beliefs like brittle glass. Before Einstein, everyone thought space and time were the rigid, unmoving stage where the universe happened.
But he said no.
He said no, space and time are the actors. They stretch, they squeeze, they warp, depending on your motion.
And this leads us to the big one, gravity. Because if space is this flexible, fabric-like thing, then gravity isn't what Newton said it was.
Right. Newton thought gravity was a force, some kind of invisible rope connecting the Earth to the moon, pulling it in. Einstein looked at his new flexible space and said, there is no rope.
So what keeps the moon from flying off into space?
Curves. The source uses the analogy of a mattress. If you put a heavy bowling ball on a mattress, it curves the fabric down.
Okay, I see that.
Now, if you roll a little marble past the bowling ball, the marble's path will curve toward it. Not because the ball pulled it, but because the very surface it's rolling on is now curved.
So the Earth is the bowling ball, and space itself is the mattress.
Precisely. Gravity is just the shape of space-time. You are sitting in your chair right now, not because Earth is actively pulling you down, but because the mass of Earth has warped the space you occupy, and you are basically sliding down that curve.
That is, frankly, terrifying. It means the ground beneath our feet isn't solid in the way we think it is. We're all just rolling around in these cosmic divots.
It's a completely different view of reality. And naturally, when he published this general relativity, most of the scientific community thought he was insane.
I mean, I would too. Time slows down, space is curvy. Sounds like science fiction.
And for years, it was just a bunch of math on paper. The source emphasizes this period of isolation for him again. He was the heretic of science. But then we get the moment of truth. The proof.
The solar eclipse of 1919.
This is the cinematic climax of the story. Einstein made a very specific, testable prediction. He said, if I'm right, and the sun's mass bends space like that bowling ball, then the light from a distant star passing near the sun should have its path bent too.
So if you look at a star that's right next to the sun in the sky, it should appear to be in the wrong place.
Exactly. But of course you can't see stars next to the sun. It's too bright. Unless
the sun goes dark during an eclipse.
So in 1919, a British astronomer, Arthur Eddington, led expeditions to Africa and Brazil. They waited for the moon to block the sun. They took photographs of the stars near the darkened solar rim. And when they developed the photographic
The
plates,
stars had moved.
they weren't where all the star maps said they should be. They were exactly where Einstein's strange new equations said they would be. He had successfully predicted the bending of the heavens.
And the source describes the reaction to this as basically global hysteria.
It was. Overnight, he went from a respected but controversial physicist to a global icon. This is when the hair becomes famous. He's on the front page of every newspaper. Lights all askew in the heavens. People felt like he'd seen the face of God.
But this is where the source and the story takes a darker turn. We can't talk about Einstein without talking about the shadow that follows this knowledge. Because proving that energy and mass are interchangeable, that famous Eames-Sutter equation, didn't just explain how stars shine.
It also explained how to unlock the terrifying power hidden inside the atom.
The bomb.
Now, we have to be really careful here, and the source is very nuanced on this point. Einstein did not build the atomic bomb. He wasn't at Los Alamos. He was actually considered a security risk by the U.S. government.
Wow.
Because he was too much of a known pacifist.
But his fingerprints are all over the theory.
Eames-Sutter is the recipe. It says that a tiny amount of mass, when multiplied by the speed of light squared, which is a truly gigantic number, equals a tremendous, almost unimaginable amount of energy, E. It proved on paper that a handful of matter could destroy a city.
And the tragedy, as the text points out, is that this discovery came from a man who was a lifelong pacifist. He hated uniforms, remember. He hated marching. He hated war.
He did. He spent the 1920s and 30s advocating for global peace. But history caught up with him. He was a prominent Jewish intellectual in Germany just as the Nazis were rising to power.
They burned his books.
They burned his books, put a bounty on his head. They called his relativity theory Jewish science and dismissed it as a fraud.
So the man who understood the universe better than anyone in history had to flee his home because of the most primitive, ignorant hatred imaginable.
He lands in America, and in 1939, he's persuaded to sign a letter to President Roosevelt, a letter warning that Germany might be building a bomb based on his theories.
And that letter kickstarted the Manhattan Project.
It did. And later in life, he called signing that letter the one great mistake of his life. He lived to see the mushroom clouds over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. He saw the beautiful invisible rules he discovered used to vaporize hundreds of thousands of people.
That image of the shadow of knowledge really lands there. You open the door to truth, but you can't control who walks through it.
And that leads to his later years. The source describes him in Princeton, New Jersey, sort of wandering around, ice cream cone in hand, helping local kids with their math homework. He became the friendly grandpa figure we all recognize.
But inside, he was still wrestling with these huge questions, and he became a fierce advocate against nationalism and racism.
He famously said, "Racism is a disease of white people," which was an incredibly bold thing to say in 1940s America. He saw the parallels.
How so?
He applied the same logic to people that he applied to physics. In physics, there are no privileged frames of reference. In his view of humanity, there should be no privileged races or nations. We are all just observers on the same floating rock.
So when we look at the whole picture, the quiet child, the patent clerk, the global celebrity, the heartbroken exile, what is the real legacy? The source ends on a note that I found, well, kind of unsettling.
It is unsettling because the legacy isn't, we have all the answers now. The legacy is uncertainty.
Explain that.
Before Einstein, we thought the universe was a giant clockwork machine. Tick-tock, predictable. We thought if we had enough information, we could know the future. Einstein showed us that the universe is wild. It's flexible. Time warps. Space bends. Reality literally depends on where you are standing and how fast you are moving.
It killed common sense.
It murdered common sense. The source puts it beautifully. Common sense is just a collection of prejudices acquired by age 18. Einstein taught us that if you want to understand the truth, you have to be willing to leave common sense behind.
Which connects all the way back to the very beginning, the polite answer.
Exactly. The polite answer is the compass needle points north because that's what it does. The true answer is we are floating in a planetary magnetic field that directs it. The polite answer is time is constant. The true answer is time is relative.
So the challenge for us, for everyone listening, isn't to understand all the tensor calculus of general relativity. It's to adopt that mindset.
It's to find your own compass. What is the thing in your life, in your industry, in your own mind that everyone accepts as a rule, but you suspect is just a polite answer?
What unseen rules are we accepting just because they seem solid?
And are you willing to look stupid or slow or crazy for questioning them? Because you have to remember, the guy who redefined reality started out by staring at a compass and simply refusing to stop wondering why.
The most dangerous thing he ever did was refuse to stop wondering.
Precisely.
Well, on that note, I think I'm going to go stare at a wall for a while and see if I can feel the earth-bending space.
Don't hurt yourself.
I will try not to. To everyone listening, thank you for taking this deep dive with us. We hope you walk away with a few better questions than you had when you started. We'll see you next time.